Welcome to the April meeting. I hope everyone had a happy Easter and Passover and whatever you celebrated. Good to be back here together. Tonight we're pleased to have Dick Geschke join us. He's going to be presenting stories and experiences a junior Army officer faced as citizen soldiers during pre-voluntary military service from 1969 to 1972. Dick is co-author of a book, In Our Duffel Bags. I can put this up in a minute since we have a demonstration of it, which provides an inside view of the military on the training fields of the Cold War in West Germany and on the combat fields of Vietnam. He will speak on what junior officers contended with during these turbulent times in American history. So Dick, without further ado, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Just out of curiosity, how many have served in Vietnam? Anybody in the Army? Where?
I was in the Signal Corps.
Where?
Tan Son Nhut Air Base and also Cameron Bay.
Oh, so where'd you go first? Tan Son Nhut?
Yeah.
Then you went to Cameron. How long?
8 months in Saigon, 4 months in Cameron Bay.
Well, my co-author in this is Bob Toto, and he was able to basically get his combat experience as an infantry officer guarding all around the port of Cameron Bay. If you remember, that was a very large port there. Yeah. Okay? Our first book that we wrote was In Our Duffel Bags, as you can see right here. You can click on to the next one. And then we have another book. The first book was done in prose. The second book is called Shadows of Combat, and we did it in a poetic version. In fact, I got so enthralled with doing things shorter. When you do poetry, you do it short. You condense everything. So a lot of the readings we're going to be doing tonight are going to be from Shadows of Combat. You can go on to the next one. The backstory of the books. Go on to the next one. Okay, this is how my voice will be heard. Go on to the next one. Again, yeah, why write? Okay, we'll stop right there. Back in 2007, I don't know what happened. All of a sudden I started writing to letters of editors on my opinions on any political thing you can think of. And I wrote not only to the Hartford Courant, but then I caught myself writing to the New York Times, the Christian Science Monitor, the Washington Times, the Washington Post. And all of a sudden I was getting published all over the place. And I was pretty proud of myself. And what I did is I showed it to, of course, my family, and I showed it to my son. And my son looks at me and said, "Why are you writing this? Why don't you write something of importance? Why don't you write a book?" Hit it again. It was my son that did this. And I said, "What, pray tell, can I write about?" He looked at me and he said, "Well, Dad, I never knew what you did in the Army." And most Vietnam veterans, in fact, most veterans don't talk about what they've done when they were in the service, especially the Vietnam veteran. And the reason why, when we came home, if you remember, we weren't particularly well thought of at that time. So we were the forgotten people. We pretty much, if we could, meld back into society, which we tried to do very, very fast. You can go on to the next one. So basically what happened was that, and I need my thingy-doobie over here, I'm going to try a new thing here with my Kindle. Usually I do it with the books, but I felt that the books were too cumbersome, and I was always fumbling around. But I'm going to still fumble around, so bear with me, please. The first reading is basically why I started writing the book. And it's called Ode to Scott. And this is a poem that was toward the end of the book. In fact, it is the last poem of the book. Even as a little boy, my son showed an interest in all my Army artifacts. things I no longer took interest in, objects long neglected and not of current considerations. Over time, I noticed those artifacts missing. As Scott grew older, he not only collected baseball cards, there were lieutenant bars on his desk, and in time, my dog tags were among the missing. He took an interest in my past, but dared never ask me as to my service in the Army. Not until he grew up and was married did he coax me to write a book. Write a book, I questioned. What, pray tell, would the book be about? Well, he said, I never knew what you did in the Army. Hence, In Our Duffel Bags was created, and those old Army artifacts have been dusted off and polished up. My life of over 40 years ago has been brought to life again. Thanks, son. You don't know how hard it is to go back 40 years. And I didn't keep a diary. And I got my Army buddy, Bob Toto, involved in it. In fact, we emailed each other back and forth, and what we had done was basically put together on a timeline from November 1st, All Saints Day, 1969, and for me, I got out of the Army on April 1st, 1972. What day is that? April Fools. I never trusted the Army after that, really. You can go on to the next one. Fort Benning and meeting Toto. Go to the next one. There's Fort Benning, Benning School for Boys. Hit the next one. Sure. There's Bob Toto. That's a picture of him taken in Amsterdam in 1970. And here's a reading, and probably the only reading that I have from In Our Duffel Bags, but I suggest reading In Our Duffel Bags before reading Shadows of Combat, because this gives an in-depth thing of what we really did. And this is a section of the book called Heading for Adventure, and this is at the beginning of the book. I was a young kid who had never flown in an airplane before, and here I was in uniform on a plane to my ultimate destination of Fort Benning, Georgia. At that point in my military career was nothing but a blank sheet of paper. The entries on that paper over the next 28 months would provide adventure, boredom, phonies, insight, mistakes, and above all, unforgettable memories. While I do remember the plane trip, I only faintly remember the bus trip to Columbus, Georgia, which was a city outside of Fort Benning. My first impression of this huge military installation was favorable. The buildings and officers' barracks reminded me of a college campus. Reporting for duty, I was assigned a room to share with the National Guard second lieutenant by the name of Weaver. I immediately organized my belongings, and once finished, I wandered onto the second floor portico, which offered an excellent view of the entire complex containing the officers' barracks. It was early evening, and dusk was creeping into the complex, but the area was well lit so one could see all the comings and goings. Off in the distance, twilight appeared to be a young second lieutenant struggling with his baggage, trying to locate his assigned quarters. As I saw a young Lieutenant Robert Toto trying to negotiate the portico, I, in my sympathy for this worn-out young man, helped him carry his things to his assigned room. 42 years later, Bob and I are still close friends. Many of my other Army acquaintances are long forgotten, but Toto and I have become lifetime Army buddies. You can hit the next one. And this Fort Benning was known as, the tradition of it is the home of the infantry, and the motto of the home of the infantry is to follow me. Here. It's kind of hard. You hit the next one. Infantry Officer Basic. This is another reading from Shadows of Combat. And Infantry Officer Basic. There we were at Fort Benning, home of the infantry, gathered there to do our duty on the day of infamy. They would mold us into a made-to-order shell, their visions of discipline to avoid a living hell. We were told of the days that we were supposed to take, NCOs a month, OCS to master the maze. IOBCs would take the cake. The word got around that this group was queer. They actually didn't want to be there. The cadre huddled in their respective cheers. Could this be different than the cause of despair? Neither group was ready for the other. Their thoughts served only what they knew. They gasped when we said, "Go, brother," because being a lifer was all they knew. Looking back at November 1969, Robert A. Toto. You can go on to the next one. And again, we're at Fort Benning, and the training there was approximately 10 weeks. It went from November of 1969 to January of 1970. During this time period of the Vietnam War, this was just prior to Vietnamization. So they were probably losing approximately 150 to 175 troopers a week. Now, understand that was a week, okay? You can go on and hit the next one. Don't go out and buy any long-playing records. Now, there's a background to this, and I want to tell you what that is. The background is that every class we went into, they told us, if you don't learn what we're going to tell you in here, you know what? You're going to die in Vietnam. So after a while, it got to be old, like click, turn it off, let them go through their scenario. We'll listen to what they have to say after they give their advertisement. So there was one class that this did not happen in, and it's called Don't Buy Any Long-Playing Records. Another class at Fort Benning, it was our 8th week, of how to lead men in combat. We sat there waiting for the warning. What warning, you ask? It was as if a needle got stuck in a groove of a record, being much repeated in all our classes, saying, if you don't learn this, you will die in Vietnam. This is a threat which, said often enough, carries no weight with these young second lieutenants. But wait, here comes 2 captains who don't threaten us. They wear patches on their right shoulders. By the way, I just want to know, do you guys know what patches on the right shoulders mean?
You were on service during the war.
You were in service during the war. You were in combat, in the combat territory. They have heard the sounds of guns. They don't make idle threats. We paid attention as they explained the benefits of their instruction. These guys mean business. No war stories or BS, just the facts, pure and unadulterated. They are to instruct us in calling in effective artillery fire. However, they tell us, if we don't take their instructions seriously, that we should not go out and buy any long-playing records. Whoa! Better take that instruction to heart, or one might just die in Vietnam. You can hit the next one. Okay, we're done. We were in 10 weeks of bliss at Fort Benning. Then we went to Fort Bliss. Fort Bliss was in El Paso, okay? So we drove from Fort Benning to El Paso. In the book, we tell the story of that wonderful trip that we took from Fort Benning to El Paso. And it's kind of a comedy, so it's kind of good to read that. From El Paso, we stayed there for 3 weeks learning the intricacies of the red-eye missiles, a handheld missile to bring down any kind of aircraft, enemy aircraft. And we learned that in 3 weeks there. But that was a country club compared to Fort Benning. We were getting soft, we were getting lazy, getting fat. From El Paso, we went to Cleveland. That's where I was born. We took leave. We took my Volkswagen Bug, which I bought in El Paso. We were going to go to Germany, by the way. All right? So I'm taking Coles to Newcastle. All right? I'm taking the VW Bug to Germany. We stay in Cleveland. We're in Cleveland for 3 or 4 days, meet the family. Bob was with me, Bob Toto. We go on to Methuen, Massachusetts, where he lives and his family is. And we stayed there 3 or 4 days. So we had about 10 days leave, I believe, at that time. And not on this map, we went from Methuen, went through New York City onto Bayonne, New Jersey, left my car over in Bayonne, New Jersey. From Bayonne, New Jersey, my car would be transported to Germany, where I would pick it up in Germany later on when I got there. From Newark, we went from Newark to Charleston. Now, we met Charleston about 5 times in my Army career. We kept going back and forth through Charleston. So it became kind of a second home. Charleston, we flew to Germany. Hit the next one. Arrival in Germany. Hit the next one. Bob and the Berlin Brigade. Bob got there a day before me. He went to the Berlin Brigade, which is a prestigious unit in Berlin. He was in what was known as the Outpost City. The Outpost City was called the Outpost Cities because Berlin is not part of West Germany, really. It's by itself. It's a divided city, 4 ways, okay? It had a wall entirely around the city, okay? Myself, I went out into a place called the Zone. In Germany, West Germany was called the Zone. So I was stationed in the Zone. That's where most of the training was done. Hit it again. Germany, the Zone. Okay?
Is this 1969 or
70? 1970, because we left Fort Benning in 1970. We were 3 weeks in Fort Bliss. By the time we got to Germany, it was early March. It's early March. When we got there, the snow was still on the ground. Okay? So you can hit it again. Training the mission in the U.S. Army in Europe. Let me explain this to you. All the training was done under the 7th Army, 7 Steps to Hell, out of Frankfurt. And what we had done is we had all the Army divisions there, the 8th Infantry, the 3rd Infantry. I think we went from the 24th Infantry to the 1st Infantry, but we had a lot of units there. We had over 1 million guys there. It was a lot of people. So we were training in places that we called Grafenwehr, Hohenfels, Vilseck, and Vilsecken. Okay? So I was in a line unit, an infantry, mechanized infantry unit, 1st Battalion, 7th Infantry, 3rd Infantry Division, and we trained in a year, probably 8 to 9 months out in the field. We only had 3 months on garrison, okay? So we spent a lot of time in the field. And you can hit the next one. And one of the places that I love the best is where the ghost of Hitler's panzers are still roaming around, is a place called Grafenwehr. And if I can find infantry weather, that would be great. Hold on. There's no better way, I think. I just don't know. Infantry weather. Line troopers cringe at the mention of Grafenwehr, Germany. Troopers in the zone refer to it as Graf. Desolate, muddy fields among the pine barrens of Bavaria, where troops refine their combat skills and learn to fight the Russian bear. As the track vehicles moved out, they had to negotiate the mud of late November, along with the pelting sleet and snow. The wind would numb the face of the platoon leader as he navigates the fields among the pine barrens. The sun shining through the threatening clouds as one tries to navigate the scene. The wind, the rain, the sleet, and the cold makes this junior officer almost wish to be in the fields of Southeast Asia. Instead, we learn to negotiate the training fields of where the ghost of Hitler's panzers once roamed, remembering Richard C. Geschke, Grafenwehr, Germany, late November 1970. Okay, you can go on to the next one. Then there's Berlin. Hit it. It's called the Outpost City, and the reason why it's called the Outpost City is that they're surrounded by communists. The Warsaw Pact's all around them, and the wall is all around them also. Of course, there's the wall. The Berlin Brigade's there. The Berlin Brigade was purely ceremonial. They were very good at marching and doing ceremonies and everything like that. But if they went out in the field with us guys out in the zone, you know, it'd be a joke because they didn't train like us. Go on. The mission in Berlin was very easy. Keep all the gateways open. There were 3 major gateways. We got 3 major gateways, air lanes going into Berlin. We've got 2 major gateways going into the city via car and truck. And then we got a train that goes in there, and that's the duty train. And if you read my book, you'll see what the duty training is all about. It's quite interesting how they do that. Checkpoint Charlie in Berlin. Now, bear with me as I go through and look for my... I had this pretty well organized before. Checkpoint Charlie in Berlin. As young kids, we saw it on TV. It was in the news, a place of confrontation. This place was the very meaning of the Cold War. When you think of the Cold War, this is what you thought of. Russian tanks and red troopers were there. American tanks and GIs were opposite Ivan. Tension and confrontation abound and a plethora of emotions. Better heads prevail, and a status quo is maintained. The checkpoint serves as an entryway to East Berlin. Toto and I go through the checkpoint as the technical allies of Ivan. We are allowed. As we go through this gateway, the East Germans check Bob's car. Mirrors are placed underneath. What were we taken to East Berlin? In fact, the police followed us everywhere we went. Going from the light of freedom in West Berlin, we entered the drab gray dullness of East Berlin, quite literally. Life is different here. Freedom does not abound. We look at the wall. Buildings are shrapnel-pocked and bleak. People do not look happy. Even their clothes are drab and gray. All looks bleak and despairing. Going westbound, we see the light. Thank God for the light of West Berlin. A long ago visit remembered. Richard C. Geschke, East and West Berlin, spring 1970. And then there was my infamous incident with the wall myself, and it's called the Bridge to Nowhere. Bob lived in West Berlin. He was an officer of the prestigious Berlin Brigade. He knew the wall well. It was summertime as Bob took me on the grand tour of the wall. He was eager to show me the bridge. It was a bridge which one half was in East Berlin and the other half was in West Berlin. Smack dab in the middle of the bridge, there for all to see, was a barbed wire fence. On the west side of the bridge was a facsimile cross marking the name and date of death. A statement for a person who tried and failed to enter the world of freedom. I found myself drawn to the fence, and I was close enough to even touch it. Suddenly, Bob screams out, "Geschke, he has a bead on you." On the watchtower, the East German points the SKS rifle straight toward my head. Whoa, dude! I flashed the V peace sign and moved backwards. Thank God he didn't shoot. The rest of my wall tour, I would never touch the wall again. Funny now, very intense long ago. Richard C. Geschke, West Berlin, summer 1971. Okay, we spent 18 wonderful months in Germany. By the 14th of the 15th month, IOBC 10-70, that's our class. Remember back there in 1969 in Fort Benning, Georgia? What they did during the Vietnam War with officers, especially of the infantry's persuasion, they would levy en masse these guys to go to Vietnam, orders to deploy, okay? We started to get pretty cocky. IOBC 7-70, 8-70, 9-70 weren't deployed. They were still in Germany or wherever, in the United States. They're having a good time. Guess who got the orders? IOBC 10-70. We got them. We're going. And that's where we went to first. A wonderful place, if anybody's ever been there. It's called Jungle School, and it's in Panama. The orders were given, and that's the first place we did. Hit the next one. And then we would go to the Republic of Vietnam. Hit the next one. There's a classroom in the jungle. So there we were. We went to Panama. This poem is indicative of what I thought about Panama. There's a classroom in the jungle. Seasoning is what they said we needed. As cattle on the range we followed, onto the path between the seas. The heat, the smell, and God, yes, the bush makes for soldiers training in the jungle. Fears are met, fears are negotiated. Tell me, teacher, is this pain necessary? How many before us have you helped? How many are now dead? Tell me, teacher, does this help us? Does this make us better prepared? Questions that can't be answered until we experience the sounds of guns. Tell me, teacher, will this jungle help us in the ventures of a war I dread? Richard C. Geschke, Fort Sherman, Panama, October 1971. Now, in the jungle, this is a growth, and it's a bush, and they grow in trees. See those long needles? Now imagine yourself on a night compass course where it's completely black. You can't see anything but two luminous dials of the guy's hat in front of you. Okay? We're going up and we're going down. And we're trying to hit a known point somewhere out in the middle of the jungle. God bless you, if you can find it. And I was pretty good at doing this. And we found 2 of the 3 points. But unfortunately, I ran up against this. And the reason why I ran up against this with my hands is that I started falling down, going down, and I grabbed onto something. That's what I grabbed onto. 3 to 4 weeks later, in Phu Bai, South Vietnam, I was still pulling that stuff out of my hands. Go ahead and hit the next one. Arrival in Vietnam. Bob goes to Cam Ranh Bay. He goes into the infantry company and the guards around good old Cam Ranh. Myself, I go to Phu Bai. I'm an infantry officer. What do they do to me? They make me a combat engineer in all their infinite wisdom. Go on to the next one. Now, one thing about Phu Bai I remember, I was there for approximately 2.5 months, and all I remember was the rain. I was in the monsoon all the time. So I got my sentiments of what I thought about Phu Bai and the rain. And be patient as I get to it. It's called Singing in the Rain. Every day the great clouds were there. It was raining. Oh no, not a regular rain. I mean, it was really raining. Very hard. How hard, you ask? Well, I say it rained so hard that you couldn't see 1 foot forward. Out in the fields, we continue our task, and it continued to rain. All day, all night. It never stopped. It rained in buckets, and on a few occasions, to a heavy drizzle. Jungle fatigue soaked to the bone. Lucky to last a month, with mamas on beating it to death to clean with even more water. From dark green shades onto being faded fatigues, going to supply to requisition more fatigues. Sir, what are you doing to your uniforms? He asked in a most respectful manner. And there were my boots. They were jungle boots, made with canvas uppers and rubber soles. They disintegrated with jungle rot, all coming from the wetness of the rain. So I kept requesting new jungle boots. The supply sergeant was looking at me and wondering if I owned stock in the company that manufactured the boots. On and on it goes, day in and day out. The monsoon continues, never seeming to end. 40 years later, I see the rain coming, and someone says of the Connecticut weather, I've never seen so much rain in my life. In answer, I calmly say in muted tones, oh, my friend, this is nothing. I've seen much worse. In my inner ear, I hear Gene Kelly. There he is, splashing and tapping in the rain, singing in the rain. Written after a recent rainstorm in Bristol, Connecticut. Richard C. Geschke, Reflections of Phu Bai, 1971, from Reflections of 2013. And finally, we got out of Phu Bai, and I accomplished a very important mission there. And probably one of the best missions I ever did when I was in the Army. It was my reason for being in the Army, and I'm very proud of it. Then I got to go to Da Nang. But as I went to Da Nang, I went with these two captains there of the infantry persuasion. And they were whack jobs. Trust me, they were whack jobs. Second tour of duty in Vietnam. This next poem is called The Beauty and the Buddha, and it represents what I thought Vietnam was really all about. Beauty and the Buddha. We were in an open Jeep along the street without joy. We were coming out of the mist, where off to our immediate left was a giant Buddha in all its calming glory. Such a beautiful sight. The sky with all its heavy blackness. We were coming down from the Hai Van Pass, headed to the suburbs of Da Nang. The weather was again changing, from sunny and breezy to threatening black clouds laden with moisture. Oh no, I thought, please, no more rain. About to give a natural thundering ovation, but wait, off in the distance, a stream of rays offers sunlight in the midday. Oriental mist, darkening clouds, streaming sunlight, offering a pastoral scene. With war all around us, I was overwhelmed with the simplicity and the beauty of what I was seeing. We Americans were mere transits of no consequence to these people of Vietnam, mere visitors we were, who were passing through, not noting its intrinsic beauty. Those who lived there knew of this scene and regarded it as their natural birthright. All of us have experience to which we would like to return. This picture is indelible in my conscious being. If I were an artist, I would paint it from memory, thinking back, why didn't I have a camera with me? Reliving past vivid scenes of one's life. Richard C. Geschke, On the Street Without Joy, December 1971. Now let me explain something as far as what he means about The Street Without Joy. Has anybody read Bernard Fall? Okay. Have you read that book?
A while back.
Okay. The Street Without Joy was a place of much combat action during the French Indochina War. And that's where we went through, okay? And that's why they call it the Street Without Joy, because so many French and Vietnamese were killed along that much-traveled route on the Hai Van Pass. Go. Returning home. I'm going to try something now. Maybe this will work, and I hope it does. My book is also an audiobook, just so you know. And
I never knew what you did in the army.
I am going to give you my thoughts about returning home.
Tattoo. No one cared. We were home, but no one cared. They were much too concerned with themselves. We didn't say anything. We kept under the radar. Hardly anyone knew we were combat veterans. Only our families knew. Go on with life. Forget about it. Deep down in my heart, I had my own type of protest. Why this war? Did we need to be there? It took me a long time to figure it out. They were wrong, the best and the brightest. Those who had never served put us into harm's way. We were but mere pawns playing out the actions of their warped desires. Their hubris, our blood, our desperation and concerns meant nothing to them. Mere pawns in geopolitics, They knew better, and the rest of the country, who didn't go there, bore little concern to our entire plight. Erasmus had a saying for this hubris: dulce bellum in expertise. War is delightful to those who have no experience of it. Even our own country could not assuage our plight. There were millions of us who went there. Millions, yes. But coming home, it was only one man facing the indifference of the people back home. Each of us facing it alone. Total isolation. But yet, no one cared. Only our families cared. Only our fellow veterans knew and cared. Our plights were sealed. No welcome home. No thanks for our service. Just get on with life, as they saw us as warmongers and baby killers. We were forgotten, and in many cases demeaned for serving our country. Southeast Asia was indeed a cauldron which invited polemic mistakes, and we as soldiers suffered the consequences. How can a country which was so astute as to win the Cold War be so clueless in their politics concerning a civil war in Vietnam? Most of them never served, but had no problem sending millions to serve in a long and senseless war. A war without a clear mission and lacking a good purpose. In the end, they were wrong, and the consequences are still with us. We as veterans have to bear the load still. See that V in the ground in the mall of the capital. It tells a solemn story, and it brings tears to my eyes. Maybe, just maybe, they will start to care, start to understand what we did. Maybe, just maybe, we will be welcomed home in a different light of true concern, and thanked for that service so long ago. Richard C. Geschke, Bristol, Connecticut, November 2010.
So that's basically what I felt like about 40 years later, after I put it all together. Mr. White saw it a heck of a lot sooner than I did, that's for sure, but it took me a little time. Most veterans put it aside, especially Vietnam veterans, they just put it behind them, and we just try to meld into society. If you can hit the next one. That's what's called America's Shame. Go ahead. And those are the two books. If anybody has any questions, I don't know if I have the answers, but I'll answer them anyway. Yes, sir.
Did you get involved in any anti-war activities after you came back?
No. I basically, nobody, in fact, my wife she knew that I was a Vietnam veteran only because my high school buddy was a Vietnam veteran, and she knew I had just come back from there. Basically, we didn't talk about it. I mean, you talk about it to other veterans, if you knew they were veterans. I think you probably even saw some of that too. You didn't say it, that's all. You just didn't say it because you were considered you were considered bad, I think. That's the only word I can say. Yes?
Did you come back to Cleveland, or did you come back to...
Yeah, I came back to Cleveland April 1st, 1972. My father was there. It was a cold day. My blood was very thin. I weighed all of 148 pounds. I usually weighed at that time about 185. They had told us when we went to Fort Lewis, when we came back, do not go out and buy any clothes because you're going to fill into those clothes pretty quickly. And they were right. But I lost a lot of weight between Panama and Vietnam.
So in Cleveland, did you find a lot of the anti-American sentiment when you went?
I went to Kent State University.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Because I know where my family was, we talked about that. And my dad, in a lot of the area, it wasn't like that in there are certain areas.
Is that here?
Yeah, nobody talked about it, but it wasn't like what was going on in the city.
Well, I think in the college campuses, it was very active, I wasn't at Kent State when that happened. In fact, I was in Germany when that happened. But the attitudes at that particular time, I mean, right from 67, 68, during Vietnam, it became very if you were on campus, there was a lot of protesting.
Can you talk at all about your mission that you were in?
Yes. The mission I had, my fellow Lieutenant Thomas Stickney, who actually graduated from Yale in 1969, he went to IOBC 10-70 also. First time I met him, he went to Germany also. He was in the 8th Infantry Division, I was in the 3rd. And he and I got put together, and we were given this mission to build a fortification around an ASP. ASP is the ammunition supply point. At this time of the war, it was called Vietnamization. At this time, we were trying to take our responsibilities and give it over to the South Vietnamese. So in order to give them the ASP to operate and do their thing, we had to build a fortification and seal up the eastern sector of the ASP. To give you an idea of what the ASP was, it was about, we had to do about a click, a little over a click. A click is a kilometer, by the way, just so you know. We had to do a kilometer. It was in swamp up to here. And we did a fortification which were 2 fences, 5 strands, 4 strands, 3 strands, 2 strands, 1 strand, barbed wire in the middle. Then another fence, smaller, more concertina wire, 3 strands, 2 strands, 1 strand. And then an apron leading out both ways. So we had to do this in a time period of a little over 2 months. I was given a time constraint from basically the beginning of October, and it had to be done by December 25th, 1971. Unbeknownst to me at this time, General Sweeney was up every day looking at me, seeing how fast I was going. Because unbeknownst to me, as soon as I was done with my mission, and it was accepted in totality by the South Vietnamese, then 4,000 people, Army people, go home. We got done December 16th. Okay? I had real good people working for me. I mean, I really did. They were good. And it was a ragtag outfit. All these guys were short-timers from other units, and they were just doing the rest of their tour of duty in Vietnam. So I had to put these guys together. Stickney was the logistical genius. He got the stuff to me, and I was the one that, ramrodded him through. Stickney left me halfway through. He had to do something else, and I had to do both. I bribed my men, and I went to my boss, who's LTC, Lieutenant Colonel, and I went up to him, I says, if these guys get this done before December 25th, let's say they get done on the 18th, from the 18th to the 25th, can they have an in-country R&R? Sure, no problem. Okay. So I bribed them. That's all I can say. But they did a real good job. We had to be very careful in doing a good job because they had to be accepted by the South Vietnamese. What made it really hard, we were in swamp up to here. That's why my boots went south. That's why my uniforms went south. And we all look like prunes. So we got the, yes?
I think you said in your book that your boots rotted about every week, and you had to get a new pair every week.
Yeah, we did.
It's incredible jungle.
Yeah, it was just, the canvas uppers were green when you got them. Nice boots, good boots. They even had holes on the bottom, if you remember. Remember the little holes they had? But the water never got out of mine because I was always in the water. But the thing of it was that they would rot out. And they get stiff, and you can actually, the things would just collapse, just brittle. Yeah. So I would go there like this, and the supply sergeant would look at me, what the hell are you doing? Please, But that's what we had to contend with. And at that time of year, it's October, November, the days were shorter too, okay? So the sun was up later and the sun was down earlier. So we had a tight schedule. We would be out there sometimes in the dark, But you didn't want to be out in the dark with Charlie around. The night belonged to Charlie, and you didn't want to get caught with Charlie. So we did a good job. That was a very good job. I'm glad we were able to do that job. Anything else?
Were you close enough so you could hear combat?
Pardon me?
Were you close enough to hear combat?
All the time. All the time. We had incoming. When I went to Da Nang, we had incoming every night. In fact, there's a chapter in my book is called, Was That 41 or 42 Rockets? And I'll spoil a little bit for you. I slept through the damn thing. 42 rockets came in, and we had 8 people killed. And what we would do in Vietnam, and I think it even happened with you there, I'm sure it did, that you would have incoming and you would DD them out to, to a place where a sandbag fortification. And you'd be there with your helmets, your weapons, and everything. Okay, so every night we would get banged in Da Nang. Going down the Hai Van Pass, the street without joy, I was sniped when we went down there. So, and these 2 captains that were with me, they were laughing. They were laughing. I mean, and they were combat veterans. Don't worry about it. He can't hit anything. And I'm looking at the pavement, and it's pinging. The rounds are pinging on the pavement. So it didn't catch me, thank God.
Are there any more questions?
Yeah. When you were in a combat area, did you wear any officer ID?
Not in Fubai. Not in Fubai. Fubai, I didn't wear my rank. Didn't want to be caught with my rank. In Da Nang, I did. It was a built-up area. But what was really funny about it, it was primitive in Fubai. We didn't have flushing toilets. We didn't have, water with pipes and everything like that. What we drank was out of a Lister bag. What we had in the mess hall was purified water, but we didn't have any toilets. It was all, we had pardon myself, what was known in Vietnam as shit burners, okay? That's what they had. So that was one of those things that they had outhouses all over the place. So when I went to Da Nang and I was there, flush the toilets, this is great, portable water, this is wonderful. I didn't know it was going to be every night we were going to get hit. We did, every night. We got hit with rockets, and it was called Rocket City, by the way, Da Nang. So we got hit pretty much so. But as I said, at that time in the war, we had 1 division, active division in every military region. There was 4 military regions in Vietnam. In 1971, 1972, you had 101st Airborne, you had the Marical, you had the 25th Infantry Division, and I think you had the 9th. That's what we had. And after that, after I left, it just went boom, and went, those divisions went south. Anybody else?
Any more questions?
Are you in contact with any of the people you served with?
The only person I was in contact with, I served with, actually, I did get in contact with Lieutenant Colonel Dillon. Just one little story. I came in the 1st and 7th Infantry, 1st and 7th Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division in Aschaffenburg in March of 1971. I went in to report it to Lieutenant Colonel Gregory P. Dillon. And I reported to him. He gave me what every lieutenant colonel of a battalion would say: this is the greatest battalion in the U.S. Army, soliloquy. So I sat there and listened to it. It took me 40-some years later, as I was watching a combat movie called We Were Soldiers. And I don't know if you saw it, with Mel Gibson. And in that movie was a guy by the name of Gregory P. Dillon, Matt Dillon. I said, oh my God. He wore a calf patch, first calf patch. He was in the Battle of Ia Drang Valley. My God, he was a hero. He had a Silver Star. I didn't even know it. Here's this guy. So I got in contact with him on Facebook, and I finally got in contact with another guy called Joe Galloway. Joe Galloway is the guy that wrote the book with Lieutenant General Moore, Hal Moore. So I know Joe Galloway, and of course I made contact with Gregory P. Dillon. In fact, my wife was going through some things the other day, and she says, "Oh, look at this. It's a letter of commendation." And I said, "Oh, it's signed by Gregory P. Dillon to me." I said, "I'll keep that." So, it's like 40 years later, all of a sudden you go back and all this stuff was in your head, but you let it go. And all of a sudden, when you write a book, all of a sudden you really remember what you did. In fact, I went to Bob Toto and I said to Bob Toto, I said, "Really, how did we do this stuff?" And he emailed me back. He says, "We were young and dumb. We were young and dumb." But it was really a privilege to do this. It really was. More therapeutic for Bob because he has PTSD. I have, my wife knows that I'm nuts, but I don't have PTSD. I don't have that. He's got some issues that keep coming into his sleep every night. They don't come to my sleep every night because, like 41 or 42 rockets hitting in and killing 8 people. Yeah, that's tragic, but it wasn't me. I didn't die. So that's the way I looked at it.
Are there any more questions? I want to give Dick a nice big hand for that.
Thank you.
We have the Air Force would like to present you a plaque.
Oh, thank you.
For coming to the meeting.